She was left pregnant and alone. Years later, her daughter's new pediatrician walked in. It was her billionaire ex. The waiting room at Maple and Main Pediatrics smelled exactly like childhood anxiety. That specific combination of crayon wax, orange-scented cleaner, and the faint metallic tang of stethoscopes that had touched too many fevered foreheads. Above the reception desk, a fish mobile turned lazy circles, its plastic scales catching morning light that filtered through windows covered in construction paper butterflies. 7-year-old Nariah Carter swung her legs from the examination table, her pink sneakers creating a rhythmic thump against the padded base while she hummed a tune from her favorite cartoon. Her mother, Destiny Carter, sat in the uncomfortable plastic chair beside her, a manila folder thick with medical records balanced on her lap. The folder's edges were soft from handling, corners bent from being stuffed into various bags over the years. Inside were 7 years of emergency room visits, specialist consultations, and prescription histories, the paper trail of a mother fighting an invisible enemy that lived in her daughter's lungs. Destiny's fingers traced the latest bill statement tucked between the pages, $3,847 for last month's breathing treatments. Insurance had covered 60%. The rest would go on the credit card that was already groaning under medical debt. "Mommy, when is the doctor coming?" Nariah asked, kicking her legs harder now, impatience creeping into her voice. "Soon, baby. Just be patient." The door opened with its familiar squeak. The third exam room always announced arrivals like that Destiny had noticed during their many visits. But the man who walked through wasn't Dr. Patterson, their usual pediatrician with the grandfather smile and collection of silly ties. This doctor was younger, maybe mid-30s, wearing a crisp white coat over a navy button-down that looked like it cost more than Destiny's monthly rent. His name tag read Dr. L. Blackwell, M.D., Pediatric Pulmonology. He was reading from a tablet as he entered, his attention focused on what Destiny assumed was Nariah's medical history. "Good morning, I'm Dr. Blackwell. Dr. Patterson is at a conference this week, so I'm covering his patients. You must be Nariah, and—" The words died as he looked up. Destiny felt the room contract around her, air suddenly too thick to breathe properly. Those eyes, dark brown with flecks of gold that caught light like amber, she'd seen them before. Seen them close enough to count those golden flecks. Seen them heavy with desire, soft with laughter, cold with goodbye. Lawson Blackwell stood frozen in the doorway, his professional composure cracking like ice under spring sun. His grip on the tablet tightened until his knuckles went white. 7 years had passed since their last conversation. 7 years, 2 months, and 14 days, if anyone was counting, which Destiny definitely wasn't. He looked different now. The medical student scrubs had been replaced by designer clothes barely hidden under his doctor's coat. The exhausted shadows under his eyes from pulling all-nighters in the library were gone, replaced by the confident bearing of someone who'd made it to the other side of struggle. "Dr. Blackwell?" Nariah's voice cut through the frozen moment. "Are you okay? You look like you saw a ghost." The innocence of the question seemed to restart Lawson's ability to function. He blinked, shifted his weight, and managed something approaching his professional demeanor. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just remembered something I forgot to do earlier." His voice was steady, but Destiny caught the microscopic tremor in his hands as he set the tablet on the counter. "Now, let's talk about how you've been feeling." He moved through the examination with practiced efficiency, listening to Nariah's lungs with a stethoscope that probably cost more than the one he'd borrowed from classmates in medical school. His fingers were gentle as they percussed her back, checking for fluid accumulation. He asked all the right questions about her symptoms, her triggers, her medication compliance. To anyone watching, he was simply a thorough doctor examining a young patient. But Destiny saw more. She saw the way his jaw clenched when Nerea coughed, that wet, rattling sound that had haunted Destiny's nights for years. She saw how his eyes lingered on Nerea's face, tracking features that were heartbreakingly familiar, the shape of her eyes, the stubborn set of her chin when he asked her to take deep breaths, the way she tilted her head when thinking about his questions. "Has she been using the inhaler as prescribed?" Lawson asked, his voice carefully neutral as he made notes on the tablet. "Twice daily, plus rescue doses when needed," Destiny replied, matching his professional tone even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "But her symptoms have been getting worse. The specialist at County General said we might need to consider stronger medications, but... He looked up, and for a moment the doctor's facade slipped. "The insurance situation is complicated." The words tasted bitter. Here she was, discussing their daughter's medical care with the man who didn't even know Nerea existed, reducing 7 years of sacrifice to complicated. Lawson's expression shifted minutely. Something that might have been pain or regret or anger flashed across his features before he locked it down. "We have several patient assistance programs available. I can have our financial counselor." "We manage." Destiny cut him off, her pride flaring hot and defensive. Nerea, oblivious to the tension crackling between the adults, piped up, "Dr. Blackwell, you have the same eyes as me. Look, Mummy, they're the same color." The observation hit the room like a physical force. Lawson's hands stilled on the tablet. Destiny's breath caught in her throat. For 3 heartbeats nobody moved. Then Lawson smiled, a professionally appropriate smile that didn't reach those eyes Nerea had so innocently identified. "Lots of people have brown eyes, sweetheart. Now, I need to listen to your breathing one more time." He completed the examination with renewed focus, as if concentrating on medical procedures could erase the questions that had to be screaming through his mind. When he finished, he helped Nerea down from the table with careful hands, his touch lingering perhaps a second longer than necessary. "Nerea, would you mind sitting in the waiting room for just a few minutes? There's a new book corner out there with some great stories. I need to discuss your treatment plan with your mom. But I want to hear about my treatment too," Nerea protested, crossing her arms in a gesture so reminiscent of Lawson's stubborn streak that Destiny had to look away. "And you will," he assured her. "But first I need to go over some boring adult stuff with your mom, medical terminology and insurance codes. Very dull. The books are much more interesting, I promise." Once Nerea reluctantly left, the door clicking shut behind her with finality, the professional distance Lawson had maintained shattered completely. He turned to Destiny, and 7 years of unspoken words filled the space between them. "How long?" His voice was raw, stripped of any pretense. "Since birth," Destiny answered, knowing exactly what he was asking. "And you never thought to what?" Her voice rose sharply before she caught herself, remembering they were in a medical office with thin walls. "Track down the medical student who made it very clear he had bigger plans than playing family. Show up at your graduation that your mother made sure I knew I wasn't welcome at. Maybe send a birth announcement to the Blackwell estate where your family's lawyers would have buried me in custody paperwork before the ink dried." Each word was a carefully aimed arrow, finding its mark in the way his face tightened. But she wasn't done. "You want to know what I thought? I thought about you every single time she struggled to breathe. Every emergency room visit, every specialist who said she needed treatments we couldn't afford. Every night I stayed up listening to her wheeze, wondering if this would be the attack that—" She stopped, unable to finish that sentence. "You should have told me." The words came out strangled. "Should I? When? Before or after your mother offered me $50,000 to disappear? Before or after you chose your residency at Johns Hopkins over staying here? Before or after you stopped returning my calls?" Thank you so much for being one of our amazing 1,000 subscribers who make these stories possible. If this story of buried secrets and unexpected reunions speaks to you, please share it with someone who loves emotional journeys. Comment "Light" if you're staying with me to the end, and subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories if you're new. Your support means everything. The weight of the past pressed down on the small examination room. Outside, they could hear Naraya's voice, chattering excitedly to someone about the book she'd found. The sound was a reminder that whatever existed between Lawson and Destiny, there was now a third person whose needs came first, a little girl with breathing problems and her father's eyes, who deserved more than the fractured history her parents carried. Lawson ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Destiny remembered from late-night study sessions when he was wrestling with impossible questions. I didn't know about the money, about my mother approaching you. Of course you didn't. That's how people like your family operate. They handle problems quietly, efficiently, with checkbooks and lawyers and polite threats wrapped in concern. Destiny stood, needing to move, to do something with the energy coursing through her. She came to my apartment 3 weeks after your father's stroke, said the family was in crisis and you needed to focus. That I seemed like a nice girl who surely understood that sometimes love wasn't enough when legacy and responsibility were at stake. Destiny. She said 50,000 would help me finish school, start over somewhere new, build a life without the complications of being attached to the Blackwell name. She made it sound like she was doing me a favor, protecting me from a world I'd never fit into. Lawson's face had gone pale. And you took it? The question hung between them, loaded with judgment and hope in equal measure. No. Destiny's answer was quiet but firm. I told her that her money couldn't buy my absence or my silence, that if you wanted me gone you'd have to tell me yourself. She said that could be arranged. What does that mean? It means I never heard from you again. Every call went to voicemail, every text unanswered, my emails bounced back. Your apartment had new tenants who'd never heard of you. It was like you'd been erased from my life so completely that I started wondering if I'd imagined our entire relationship. Lawson was shaking his head, his expression shifting from defensive to confused to something that looked like dawning horror. I changed my number once, when I moved to Baltimore for residency. But I sent you the new one. I emailed it, texted it from the new phone to your old number in case you'd changed yours too. I never got it. And the letters you mentioned earlier, 4 of them, each one more desperate than the last. The final one included an ultrasound. Your daughter's first picture, sent to every address I could find connected to you. None of them were returned, so someone received them. Someone made sure you never saw them. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't the silence of anger or accusation. It was the silence of 2 people realizing they'd been played by forces larger than their individual choices. I need to make a call, Lawson said finally, to someone who might have answers about what happened to those letters. But first, he looked toward the door where Naraya waited, unknowing. What happens now? With her, with us? There is no us, Destiny said, though the words hurt more than she expected. There's you, and there's me, and there's Naraya. Right now, you're her doctor. That's the only relationship that matters. She's my daughter. Biologically, yes. But you don't get to walk into her life and claim fatherhood based on genetics. You earn that title through showing up, through being present, through proving that you're not going to disappear when things get complicated or your family decides she's inconvenient. I want to earn it. The intensity in his voice made her look at him directly. I want to be her father, Destiny, not just on paper or in name, but in every way that matters. Tell me what I need to do. Before she could answer, a soft knock interrupted them. The receptionist's voice came through the door. Dr. Blackwell, your next patient is here, and Naraya is asking if everything's okay. Reality crashed back in. They were in a pediatric clinic, and there were other children who needed care, and Naraya was waiting for explanations they weren't ready to give. "We'll talk," Destiny said quietly, "but not here and not now. Finish your appointments. I'll take Naraya home. You have my number. At least, you should have it from her medical records." "I do, then use it. Text me tonight. We'll figure out next steps." She moved toward the door, then paused. "And Lawson, whatever you find out about those letters, whatever your family did or didn't do, it doesn't change the fact that she's been without a father for 7 years. You can't fix that with explanations or apologies. You fix it by being there from now on, every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." He nodded, understanding the weight of what she was asking. "I'll be there, I promise." "Don't make promises yet," Destiny said. "Make choices, consistent, daily choices that prove those promises mean something." She opened the door to find Naraya examining a book about ocean creatures, completely absorbed in a diagram of jellyfish. Her daughter looked up with a smile that was so innocent, so untouched by the complicated adult world, that Destiny felt her heart constrict. "Ready to go, baby? Can we come back to see Dr. Blackwell? He's really nice, and he explained my breathing problems better than anyone else." Destiny caught Lawson's eye over her daughter's head, a moment of shared recognition that some truths were too large to process all at once. "Yes," Destiny said. "We'll definitely be seeing Dr. Blackwell again." As they left the clinic, Destiny didn't look back, but she felt the weight of Lawson's gaze following them, and felt the shift in the foundation of her carefully constructed world. For 7 years she'd been both mother and father, provider and protector, the only constant in Naraya's life. Now, whether she was ready or not, that was about to change. 7 years earlier, the community health fair at Riverside Park had been Destiny's idea from conception to execution. She'd spent 3 weeks hand-painting banners with chalk pastels, each one announcing free screenings, vaccination clinics and wellness consultations. The largest banner, strung between 2 oak trees at the entrance, "Read your health, your right," in letters that shifted from sunrise orange to deep purple. Paint had stained her fingers for days afterward, leaving crescents of color under her nails that she wore like badges of honor. The fair buzzed with families seeking free medical care they couldn't otherwise afford. Destiny moved between booths, clipboard in hand, directing elderly couples to blood pressure stations, guiding young mothers to immunization tents. She was checking on the diabetes screening line when she noticed the medical student at the nutrition booth, looking completely overwhelmed. He stood behind a table, loaded with pamphlets about healthy eating, holding a head of lettuce like it might explode. 3 children stared up at him expectantly, while he clearly struggled to make vegetables sound exciting. "And this is lettuce," he said weakly. "It's very green." Destiny couldn't help herself. She walked over, took the lettuce from his hands, and addressed the children. "This isn't just lettuce, this is superhero fuel. You know what gives the Hulk his green color? Chlorophyll. Same stuff that's in here." The children's eyes widened. The medical student, his name tag read, "Lawson Blackwell, medical student," shot her a grateful look. "Clearly, I should stick to reading x-rays," he said, after the children ran off, clutching nutrition pamphlets. "I'm better with bones than vegetables." "First year?" Destiny asked, reorganizing his scattered pamphlets. "Third, actually, which makes my vegetable incompetence even more embarrassing." He extended his hand. "Lawson. And you're the wizard who just saved me from being pelted with organic tomatoes." "Destiny. I organized this fair, so technically I'm responsible for putting you in vegetable danger in the first place." His laugh was rich, unguarded, nothing like the polished chuckles she'd later hear him practice for hospital board meetings. "Well then, Destiny, the least you can do is have lunch with me. I promise to avoid salads entirely." Their first real date happened 3 days later, Along the riverwalk where food trucks gathered every evening, Lawson bought them fish tacos from a bright yellow truck called Coastal Dreams, and they sat on a bench watching kayakers navigate the gentle current. He talked about his rotation in pediatrics, how children's resilience amazed him. She described her work coordinating healthcare access for underserved communities, the satisfaction of connecting people to resources they desperately needed. "You're basically doing what I want to do," he said, "just from opposite ends. You're bringing healthcare to people. I'm trying to become the healthcare they need." Weeks dissolved into each other like sugar in warm tea. Tuesday evenings became their standing date, rooftop access at his apartment building, where they'd spread out a blanket and watch the city shift from daylight to darkness. He'd bring medical journals, reading passages aloud when he found something fascinating about new treatment protocols. She'd bring her laptop, showing him spreadsheets for mobile clinic routes she was designing. "We could do this," she said one night, her head on his shoulder as city lights sparkled below. "A clinic that actually goes to people instead of waiting for them to come to us. Preventive care, chronic disease management, pediatric services, all of it. The Carter Blackwell Mobile Medical Unit," he said, testing the words. "Or Blackwell Carter. We'll flip a coin." She remembered the exact moment she knew she loved him. It was a Thursday morning, and she'd mentioned craving cinnamon rolls while studying for her public health certification exam. He showed up at the library 20 minutes later, out of breath from running, holding a still warm cinnamon roll wrapped in napkins from the bakery 6 blocks away. Frosting had leaked through the paper, coating his fingers. "Brain food," he said simply, kissing her forehead before heading to his own classes. They spent entire Saturdays at the free clinic, where he volunteered, Destiny handling intake paperwork while Lawson examined patients. Between appointments, they'd steal moments in the supply closet, mapping out their future clinic on the back of prescription pads. Mobile units that could reach rural areas. Sliding scale payments. Partnership with local schools for childhood wellness programs. 5 years, he'd say, tracing architectural dreams on her palm. 5 years and we'll have our first unit on the road. The first crack in their foundation appeared when Lawson's father made an unexpected visit to the hospital. Richard Blackwell commanded attention simply by existing. 6 feet of tailored suits and calculated power. Someone who viewed medicine as a business venture rather than a calling. Destiny had been bringing Lawson lunch when she saw them in the hospital corridor. Richard's voice carried despite its low volume. "Pediatrics is admirable, son, but it's not leadership material. The board expects Blackwell men to run hospitals, not read picture books in exam rooms. Children need quality health care too, Dad. Children don't serve on boards. They don't make donations. They don't expand hospital networks." Richard's eyes had swept past Destiny like she was furniture. "Your mother has arranged dinner with the Henley family. Their daughter just finished her MBA at Wharton. Useful connections." Lawson found Destiny later in the cafeteria, pushing salad around her plate. "He doesn't control my life," he said firmly. "My parents, their world, that's not us." But the seed was planted. She began noticing things she'd previously ignored. How his phone lit up with messages from his mother about charity galas he never attended. How he'd sometimes stare at nothing, jaw tight, after particularly long phone calls home. How he'd changed the subject when she asked about meeting his family. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Destiny remembered the exact time because she'd been watching the clock, waiting for Lawson to come home from his shift. His phone rang 3 times before he answered, voice thick with sleep. She watched his face change in the green glow of his phone screen. His father had collapsed during a board meeting. Massive stroke. Emergency surgery underway. They drove to Blackwell Memorial Hospital in silence. Lawson's hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to leave marks. In the private family waiting room, Lydia Blackwell sat perfectly composed despite the crisis, her silver hair unmoving even under fluorescent stress. "Lawson," she said simply, "the board is here." What followed was less about Richard's medical crisis and more about corporate preservation. Board members filed through, speaking in hushed tones about succession planning, interim leadership, stock prices. Lawson was pulled into meetings while his father was still in surgery. "The bylaws are clear," someone said. "A Blackwell must maintain controlling interest." Destiny waited 14 hours in that waiting room, watching Lawson transform from the man who brought her cinnamon rolls to someone she didn't recognize. His phone was confiscated by PR representatives who needed to control the narrative. His email was rerouted through legal channels. Security guards appeared at entrances she hadn't noticed before. When Richard survived but remained in critical condition, the corporate machine shifted into overdrive. Lawson was installed as interim board chairman before his father was even conscious. Press releases were drafted. A tailor appeared to measure him for suits appropriate for his new position. Her first call went straight to voicemail. "Lawson, I know things are crazy, but please call me when you can. I love you." Her 10th call wasn't even answered. The number had been changed. She tried email, but received an automated response that his account was being monitored for business purposes only. She went to his apartment and found movers boxing up his possessions under the supervision of a woman with a clipboard who informed her that Mr. Blackwell had relocated to the family estate. Finally, desperately, she'd confronted Lydia Blackwell in the parking garage. "Please," Destiny had said, "I just need to talk to him." Lydia's expression was almost kind. "My dear, you have to understand. Lawson has obligations now. Responsibilities that extend beyond personal desires. The board has expectations. Investors need reassurance. He needs someone who understands our world." She touched Destiny's hand gently, a maternal gesture that felt like a dismissal. "Give him time. If it's meant to be, he'll find his way back." 2 weeks after that parking garage conversation, Destiny stared at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test in her bathroom. She'd bought 3 different brands, each confirming what her body already knew. 7 weeks along, according to her calculations. She wrote the letter 17 times before getting it right. Not pleading or demanding, just informing. She included the ultrasound from her 8-week appointment, a grainy image where their baby looked like a bean with a flickering heartbeat. She sent copies to his apartment, the family estate, the hospital board office, even his old medical school address. Each one returned unopened, marked addressee unknown, or returned to sender in official stamps that felt like denials of their entire relationship. That night, Destiny made 2 decisions. First, she would have this baby alone if necessary. Second, she would never beg anyone to be part of their child's life. The mint green house on Sycamore Street in Seabrook had been Aunt Inez Robles' domain for 37 years. Paint peeled from its shutters like sunburned skin, and the porch sagged slightly on the left side, but the garden exploded with life, tomatoes climbing trellises, marigolds bordering the walkway, herbs growing in repurposed coffee cans. When Destiny arrived with 2 suitcases and a positive pregnancy test, Inez took one look at her niece's swollen eyes and set down ground rules while brewing strong coffee with cinnamon. "First, we are not doing pity in this house. Pity is poison that looks like medicine. Second, we are not ashamed. That baby didn't ask for complicated circumstances. Third, we are making plans, concrete, practical, step-by-step plans." She'd pulled out a yellow legal pad, the same kind she'd used for decades as a night shift nurse. "Now, tell me everything. Medical history, financial situation, support system. We're building a blueprint for survival." The spare bedroom became Destiny's sanctuary. Inez had already cleared it out, leaving only essentials. A bed with a quilt her grandmother had made, a dresser missing one handle, a rocking chair positioned by the window where morning light would eventually stream across her baby's face. The walls were butter yellow, a color Inez claimed promoted optimism and clarity. "Your mother painted this room when she was pregnant with you," Inez revealed that first night, running her weathered hand along the doorframe. "Stayed here her last trimester when your father was deployed. History has rhythms, mija. Sometimes we repeat them with variations. Life in Seabrook operated on different economics than the world Destiny had glimpsed through Lawson. Here, survival was communal art. She learned to stretch $20 across a week of groceries, transforming carrots, potatoes, and whatever meat was on clearance into soups that could last 3 days. The grocery list lived on the refrigerator, items crossed off and re-added based on which bills had been paid. Budget pads became her new literature. Every penny tracked, every expense justified. The electric bill got paid first. Texas Heat didn't negotiate. Then water, because Inez's medications required precise dilution. Food came third, but the community filled gaps in ways that made Destiny's eyes burn with grateful tears she'd only cry in the shower. Walter Green from 2 houses down appeared every Saturday with extra vegetables from his garden that somehow always included exactly what they needed. His construction worker hands would fix leaking faucets and squeaking doors, refusing payment beyond glasses of Inez's lemonade. "My Helen went through this alone when I was in Vietnam," he'd say, adjusting his cap. "Community means nobody fights alone." Zadie Bell, who ran the daycare center at Mount Olive Baptist, started dropping by with bags of baby clothes her current kids had outgrown. "Been saving these for someone who'd appreciate them," she'd say, though the tags were sometimes still attached, clearance stickers carefully removed. Celine Hart, the retired teacher across the street, brought books, boxes of them. "Babies need words from day one," she insisted, stacking board books on the coffee table. "Reading is rebellion against circumstances." The neighborhood wrapped around Destiny like a quilt made of different fabrics, each person contributing their square of kindness without demanding explanation or offering judgment. Naria arrived during the kind of Texas storm that made the news. Rain hammered the hospital windows while thunder rolled across the sky like cosmic furniture being rearranged. Destiny labored for 16 hours, Inez holding one hand while the other gripped the bed rail hard enough to leave marks. "You're stronger than the weather," Inez whispered when contractions peaked. "Storms pass, strength stays." The moment Naria entered the world, the storm broke. Sun suddenly poured through the windows, creating rainbow prisms through water droplets still clinging to glass. The baby's cry was strong but raspy, concerning the nurses enough to check her oxygen levels twice. "She's got spirit," the delivery doctor said, placing Naria on Destiny's chest. "Listen to that voice. She's already making herself heard." Inez leaned close to the baby, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd seen hundreds of births and deaths. "You're going to be a lighthouse, pequeña, guiding your mama through dark waters she doesn't even see coming yet." The birth certificate required decisions. Father's name left blank. Last name Carter, Destiny's family name, solid and unchangeable. Middle name Hope, because sometimes naming something helps it become true. That first night, as Destiny held her daughter while machines monitored her slightly labored breathing, she whispered promises. "You'll have everything that matters. Love, education, security. Maybe not everything you want, but everything you need. That's my oath to you." The first months passed in a blur of milk and music, of midnight walks through the living room when Naria's breathing grew too raspy for sleep. Destiny learned her daughter's sounds, the difference between hunger cries and discomfort, between normal baby noises and the wheeze that meant another emergency room visit was imminent. Their routine developed organically. Morning feedings by the window where they could watch Celine's cat stalk birds he never caught. Afternoon tummy time on a blanket Zadie had. Crocheted, surrounded by toys donated by the church nursery. Evening baths in the kitchen sink, because it was easier on Destiny's still healing body than bending over the tub. She's tracking everything, Inez observed, watching 3-month-old Naraya follow the ceiling fan's rotation with intense focus. That's an engineer's concentration, or maybe a doctor's. Joy lived in small moments, protected like a candle flame cupped against wind. Naraya's first smile, gas or not, at 5 weeks. The way she gripped Destiny's finger during feedings, holding on like she'd never let go. Her delight at discovering her own toes, examining them with scientific intensity that made Destiny's heart constrict. The nights were hardest when Naraya's breathing would roughen and Destiny would sit upright in the rocking chair, infant against her chest, counting respirations and praying to every deity she could name that this wouldn't be the night they lost the fight. "Breathe with me, baby," she'd whisper, her own breathing deliberately slow and deep, hoping somehow Naraya would match the rhythm. In and out. "We've got this." By Naraya's first birthday, Destiny had transformed necessity into opportunity. The mural business started accidentally. She'd painted a tree on Naraya's bedroom wall to make the space feel less like borrowed time and more like home. Zadie saw it during a visit and commissioned one for the daycare. Word spread through Seabrook's network of mothers, teachers, and small business owners. Franklin Elementary hired her to paint an entire hallway with a parade of animals reading books. She spent 3 weeks on that project, Naraya in a playpen nearby, turning education into adventure across 40 feet of wall. The elephants carried dictionaries, bears studied maps, and one rebellious lobster read a cookbook while surrounded by concerned fish. The yoga studio downtown wanted something promoting serenity. Destiny created a wall of ferns that seemed to breathe, their fronds catching imaginary wind, leading the eye toward a painted window that opened onto mountains that didn't exist in Texas, but somehow felt achievable. Each project added to their survival fund. The envelope in Inez's kitchen drawer grew thicker, emergency money for Naraya's medications, for the specialist visits insurance barely covered, for the nebulizer that had become as essential as furniture. "You're building something," Inez said one evening, watching Destiny sketch designs while Naraya played with blocks. Not just income, reputation, foundation. By year 3, Destiny had a waiting list. Schools wanted literary characters dancing across libraries. Pediatric offices wanted underwater worlds in waiting rooms. The children's wing at Seabrook General commissioned an entire forest, complete with hidden animals that young patients could discover during long stays. They moved into their own apartment when Naraya turned 5, a modest 2-bedroom only 6 blocks from Aunt Inez, close enough for daily visits but far enough to establish independence. The first night in their own space, Destiny sat on the floor of the empty living room with Naraya curled in her lap, both of them eating pizza straight from the box. "Is this our forever home, Mummy?" Naraya had asked. "This is our right now home," Destiny had answered carefully. "But we're together, which makes anywhere feel like forever." When Naraya turned 5, Dr. Leonard Rowe announced his retirement. He'd been their pediatrician since that first emergency visit when Naraya was 6 months old, her breathing so labored they'd rushed straight from home to his after-hours clinic. "I'm not abandoning you," he assured Destiny during what would be their last regular appointment. "The practice is merging with Maple and Maine Pediatrics. They have better resources, more specialists. Dr. Patterson is excellent, trained at some of the best hospitals in the country. Naraya will be in good hands." The examination room felt smaller with just the 2 of them in it. Destiny could hear Naraya in the waiting room, her animated voice describing the book's pictures to the receptionist, who was indulging her enthusiasm with practiced patience. The sound anchored Destiny, reminding her that whatever happened in this room, her daughter's needs came first. Lawson stood by the window, his back to her, hands clasped behind him in a posture she recognized from years ago, his thinking stance, what he did when wrestling with complex diagnoses or difficult decisions. The afternoon light outlined his profile, and for a moment, Destiny saw the medical student who'd once mapped their future on prescription pads. "I didn't know, Destiny." His voice was barely above a whisper, each word carefully measured. "I need you to understand that. I didn't know about her, about Neriah. How could you not know?" The question came out harder than she intended. "I tried everything except hiring a skywriter." He turned to face her, and the pain in his expression was so raw it made her stomach clench. "After my father's stroke, after I was pushed into the interim position, my mother and the board controlled everything. My phone, my mail, my entire life was filtered through committees and assistants. They said it was for corporate security during the transition." He paused, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that transported her back 7 years. "I should have fought harder to maintain some autonomy. I should have questioned why you disappeared so completely." "I didn't disappear. I was erased." The words hung between them, sharp and undeniable. Lawson moved to speak, then stopped, seeming to recognize that no immediate response could undo 7 years of absence. "She has asthma," Destiny said, shifting to safer ground. "Moderate persistence, triggered by environmental factors and exercise. We've been managing it with daily controllers and rescue inhalers, but the attacks have been getting more frequent. Dr. Patterson was going to refer us to a specialist, but—" She gestured vaguely, encompassing the cosmic joke of him being that specialist. "Her breathing patterns show signs of potential allergic components," Lawson said, sliding into medical professionalism like armor. "We should run a full panel, check for specific triggers. The wheezing pattern suggests—" He stopped himself. "I'm sorry. I'm defaulting to doctor mode because I don't know how else to process this." "Maybe that's where we start," Destiny said. "You should be her doctor first. Everything else we figure out as we go." Lawson sat down on the rolling stool, bringing himself to her seated eye level. The gesture was deliberate, she realized, removing the power dynamic of standing over her. "Tell me what you need," he said. "What boundaries, what pace, what structure would make this work for you and Neriah?" Destiny had imagined this conversation countless times over the years, but faced with its reality, her prepared speeches evaporated. "We move slowly, glacially slowly. Neriah is the center point of every decision. She doesn't know about you, doesn't know anything about her father beyond the age-appropriate explanation that he had to go away before she was born. That's fair. No sudden appearances at her school. No gifts that require explanation. No promises you might not keep when your other world calls you back." Each condition was a small wound. She could see it in how he absorbed them, but he nodded. "Understood. If we do this, if you become part of her life, it starts small. Coffee meetings where we discuss her medical care. Maybe eventual trips to the park where you're introduced as Dr. Blackwell who's helping with her asthma. Information exchanges, not headlines. I won't have her life disrupted by whatever media attention follows the Blackwell name." "There won't be media attention," Lawson said quietly. "I left that world, Destiny, officially, about 5 years ago. Once my father was stable enough to resume control, the revelation shifted something in the room's atmosphere." Destiny studied his face, searching for deception but finding only exhaustion mixed with relief. "My father recovered," Lawson continued. "Took him 18 months, but he returned to the board chair position. The moment he was stable enough, I submitted my resignation. Not just from the company, from everything connected to it. The estate, the trust fund positions, the social obligations, all of it. But you're here, in Seabrook, practicing medicine at a community clinic. I kept my medical license, fought harder for that than anything else. A ghost of a smile crossed his features. I work at 3 different clinics actually, 2 days a month here. The rest split between County General's free clinic and a mobile unit that serves rural areas. Remember our mobile clinic dream? Turns out someone else had the same idea. I just drive their van now instead of designing it. The image was so incongruous with the Lawson Blackwell she'd seen in business magazines, the heir apparent in $1,000 suits, that Destiny almost laughed. Your family must be thrilled. My mother hasn't spoken to me in 14 months. My father communicates through lawyers when necessary. They consider my choices a betrayal of generations of Blackwell legacy. He shrugged, but she caught the hurt beneath his attempted nonchalance. The preventive care initiatives I'm working on now help more people in a month than any board decision I ever made. Medicine has a heartbeat I couldn't silence, no matter how many spreadsheets they put in front of me. Why didn't you try to find me? The question escaped before she could stop it. After you left that world, why didn't you look? His answer was simple, devastating. I did. But Destiny Carter is a surprisingly common name, and the last address I had was your apartment near the university, the one you'd left 7 years ago. I hired someone to search, but without more information. He trailed off. I thought maybe you'd gotten married, changed your name, started over, which you had every right to do. I wrote you letters. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. Multiple letters. And I sent an ultrasound image. I tried every address I could find. Your apartment, the family estate, the hospital board office, even your old medical school address. Lawson went completely still. When? Starting 2 weeks after your father's stroke. The last one was sent when I was 8 weeks pregnant, hand-delivered to the hospital by a courier service. The color drained from his face. Destiny, I never received any letters. Not one. Your mother did. I watched her throw the last one away without opening it. I was across the street, waiting to see if the courier could get it to you directly. She came out, took the envelope from him, looked at it for maybe 3 seconds, then dropped it in the trash can beside the entrance. The silence that followed was deafening. Lawson's hands clenched and unclenched on his thighs, processing implications that rewrote 7 years of history. His professional composure cracked, revealing something volcanic beneath. She knew, the words came out strangled. My mother knew you were pregnant and she... He stopped, unable to complete the sentence. I don't know if she knew. She never opened that envelope, at least not while I was watching. Destiny forced her voice to remain steady, though her hands trembled. Maybe she just thought I was another inconvenience to be disposed of, another edge to trim during the crisis. There would have been records, Lawson said, his mind visibly working through corporate procedures. During that period, everything was documented for legal reasons. Every piece of mail, every communication, every... He pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. What are you doing? Texting Victor Hale. He was head of security during the transition, one of the few people I still trust from that time. If there was a system in place to intercept personal communications, he would know. He looked up from his phone. Victor left the company shortly after I did. Said what they made him do during the crisis didn't sit right with his conscience. If anyone kept evidence, it would be him. Destiny watched him type, noting the way his jaw tightened with each word. The message was brief but urgent, she could tell from the way his fingers moved. Outside the examination room, normal clinic sounds continued, phones ringing, children chatting, the mundane rhythm of healthcare that felt surreal against their conversation. He'll be discreet, Lawson assured her, though she hadn't asked. Victor has grandchildren now, left corporate security for private consulting. He always thought the family's handling of my situation was wrong, but he had non-disclosure agreements that prevented him from saying anything while employed. They sat in uncomfortable silence, Two people separated by 3 feet of linoleum and 7 years of stolen time. Naraya's laughter drifted through the door. She'd found another book from the sound of it, one with funny voices the receptionist was performing with enthusiasm. "She sounds happy," Lawson said softly. "You've done an incredible job with her. She's easy to love." Destiny's response was automatic, protective. "She's bright, curious, determined. Stubborn when she thinks she's right, which is often. She draws constantly. Not well, but with commitment she names everything, even inanimate objects. Her nebulizer is called Mr. Whistle. Her inhaler is Princess Puff." The description drew a genuine smile from Lawson, transforming his face into something younger, lighter. Princess Puff. She decided medicine should have proper names, not just descriptions. Makes them less scary, she says. Lawson's phone buzzed against the examination table where he'd set it. Both of them stared at the device like it might explode. He picked it up, read the message, and his expression darkened to something Destiny had never seen before. "What does it say?" He turned the screen toward her. Victor's response was brief but loaded. "There's a file, Archive Box 2017-43C, listed as Personal Correspondence, Quarantine Protocol. Meet me tonight. Bring nobody. This is bigger than just letters." The implications settled over them like fog. Someone had deliberately, systematically prevented Lawson from knowing about his daughter. Someone had stolen 7 years from all 3 of them. The examination room suddenly felt like a crime scene, evidence of theft that couldn't be prosecuted but could never be forgiven. "I should go," Lawson said, though he made no move to leave. "Naria needs to get home, and you need time to process all of this. What about the file? I'll handle it. Tonight. Then we'll talk again." He stood, resumed his professional demeanor with visible effort. "Bring her back Thursday. I want to run those allergy tests, adjust her medication protocol. As a doctor," he added quickly. "Just her doctor, for now." Destiny stood as well, feeling the weight of decisions that would ripple through all their lives. Lawson. "If that file contains what we think it does, then someone owes us explanations that no amount of apologizing could cover." His voice was steel wrapped in silk. "But first we focus on Naria, her health, her stability, her needs. Everything else is secondary." It was the right answer, the one that made Destiny believe maybe, possibly, they could navigate this impossible situation. 3 weeks after the revelation in the examination room, Lawson arrived at Riverside Park wearing a navy sweater that had seen better days and jeans that actually bore grass stains. Destiny almost didn't recognize him without the clinical setting, without the white coat that provided professional distance. He looked younger, uncertain, carrying a small bag of duck-safe birdseed like an offering. "Dr. Blackwell!" Naraya ran toward him, her breathing slightly labored from playground adventures, but her enthusiasm undimmed. "Mummy said you were coming to feed ducks with us." "If that's okay with you," Lawson said, crouching to her eye level. "I brought special seeds that won't hurt their stomachs. Regular bread can make ducks sick." Naria's eyes widened with concern. "I've been making ducks sick?" "Not on purpose. Now you know better, so you can help them stay healthy. Want to be a duck doctor with me today?" The easy way he deflected potential guilt into empowerment made Destiny's chest tight. He was good with children, natural in a way that suggested either extensive practice or genuine instinct. She wondered how many pediatric patients had benefited from this gentle approach during his clinic days. They walked to the pond's edge, Naria between them, chattering about duck personalities she'd assigned based on their swimming patterns. The anxious one who circled 3 times before eating, the brave one who came closest to shore, the fancy one with the green head who acted like he owned the whole pond. "That's actually accurate behavior observation," Lawson told her seriously. Different ducks have different personalities, just like people. You're a natural scientist. Neraya beamed, then grabbed both their hands to pull them closer to the water. For a moment, they stood linked, a child's innocent gesture creating a bridge neither adult had been brave enough to build. Destiny caught Lawson's quick intake of breath, saw him look down at Neraya's small hand in his with something approaching reverence. When they sat on a bench to rest Neraya's lungs, Lawson pulled out a paper plate from his bag. Want to see something cool? He proceeded to demonstrate the physics of flipping a paper plate to make it spin like a flying saucer, complete with sound effects that made Neraya giggle until she wheezed. Then he taught her the wrist motion, patiently adjusting her grip until she could send the plate sailing across the grass. "How do you know that?" Neraya asked, retrieving the plate for another attempt. "My best friend in medical school taught me. He said silly tricks were important for doctors to know, to make kids feel better during scary visits." Destiny watched them play, noting how Lawson let Neraya lead their interactions. He didn't try to force bonding, didn't overwhelm her with attention or gifts. He simply existed in her space, available but not invasive, following her interests rather than directing them. After the park, they stopped for ice cream at a truck near the playground. Lawson reached for his wallet, but Destiny was faster, already handing cash to the vendor. "I can," he started. "I know you can," she interrupted quietly, mindful of Neraya examining flavor options. "That's not the point." Later, while Neraya played on the climbing structure, they sat on adjacent swings, barely moving. "I want to help," Lawson said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Not take over, not control, just help. Her school expenses, her medical bills, even just groceries. I've missed 7 years of providing for her, and jumping in with money now would confuse everything." Destiny's response was firm but not unkind. "She doesn't understand why you're suddenly in our lives. If you start paying for things, I have to explain why this particular doctor is different from all others. We're not there yet." He nodded, though she could see the frustration in the set of his shoulders. "Then what can I do? How can I contribute without disrupting?" Destiny considered this. "Tuesday, I'm painting a mural at the community center. 20-foot wall, lots of supplies to carry. I could use an extra pair of hands for the heavy lifting." "I'll be there," he said immediately. "What time?" 6 in the morning. The light's best then, and it's before the center opens. 6 it is." She watched him process this small allowance. Manual labor instead of financial support, presence instead of provision. "You know I've never painted anything in my life, right?" "You won't be painting. You'll be carrying paint cans, holding ladders, maybe mixing colors if you can follow directions." "I can follow directions," he said, and something in his tone made her look at him sharply. But he was watching Neraya navigate the monkey bars, counting under his breath. She realized he was monitoring her breathing even from this distance. The school mural unveiling drew a crowd of parents, teachers, and students to Franklin Elementary's main hallway. Destiny's latest creation transformed boring beige walls into an underwater library, where sea creatures read books among coral shelves. An octopus juggled 8 different genres with its tentacles, while scholarly seahorses wore tiny spectacles. Neraya dragged Lawson through the crowd, pointing out hidden details her mother had incorporated: a small angelfish reading a medical textbook, a starfish studying stars through a telescope, a whale whose spout formed letters spelling red. "The detail is extraordinary," someone said behind them. Destiny turned to find Celine Hart, her former neighbor, examining the mural with an appraising eye. The retired teacher's gaze moved from the wall to Lawson, taking in his presence with Neraya's hand in his. "Mrs. Hart, this is Dr. Blackwell. He's Neraya's pulmonologist," Destiny said, the introduction carefully neutral. Celine's eyes, sharp despite her 73 years, missed nothing. Not the way Lawson stood protective near Neraya in the crowd, not the careful distance Destiny maintained, not the child's easy comfort with both adults. "Doctor," Celine said slowly, extending her hand. "How fortunate that Neraya has such dedicated medical care." "She makes it easy," Lawson replied, shaking her hand. "She's an exceptional child. Indeed she is." Celine's tone carried layers of meaning. "Her mother has done remarkable things with limited resources. It's good to see that changing." The words were perfectly appropriate on the surface, but Destiny heard the underlying message. Celine had done the math, recognized the resemblance, and drawn conclusions. The older woman squeezed Destiny's hand briefly, a gesture of support that required no words. As more community members approached to congratulate Destiny on the mural, Lawson found himself pulled into conversations. Parents asked about pediatric health topics. Teachers inquired about school wellness programs. He answered with patience and genuine interest, his medical knowledge making him valuable beyond his connection to Neraya. "Your doctor friend is nice," Walter Green told Destiny, having cornered Lawson for advice about his grandson's allergies. "Don't talk down to people. Not all doctors remember how to do that." The Natural History Museum's free admission Sunday brought out families in droves. Lawson had suggested it casually. "There's a new respiratory health exhibit designed for kids. Might help Neraya understand her condition better." They spent 2 hours wandering through displays, Neraya absorbing information with fierce concentration. At the model lung demonstration, she pressed buttons to show healthy versus asthmatic airways, fascinated by the visual representation of what happened inside her body. "So that's why I need Princess Puff," she said seriously, "to make the tubes bigger so air can get through." "Exactly right," Lawson confirmed. "You understand your condition better than some medical students I've taught." Outside the respiratory exhibit, a massive dinosaur skeleton dominated the main hall. Neraya insisted they needed a picture for my science project about bones, and recruited a passing museum volunteer to take it. Everyone squeezed together, the volunteer instructed, fiddling with Destiny's phone camera. They arranged themselves awkwardly, Neraya in the middle, adults on either side. The first shot was stiff, posed, uncomfortable. But then Neraya announced, "The T-Rex looks like he's about to sneeze." And the absurdity of it made all three laugh, just as the timer went off again. That second photo captured something real. Neraya mid-giggle, looking up at Lawson, who was looking at her with undisguised wonder, while Destiny watched them both with an expression caught between hope and fear. Later that night, after Neraya was asleep, Destiny printed the photo at the 24-hour pharmacy. She stood in the photo department, holding the glossy paper, seeing what others would see. A family, natural and connected, as if they'd always existed this way. She bought a simple frame, telling herself it was just to preserve a memory of Neraya's museum day, but she placed it on the bookshelf where she could see it from the couch, a tangible proof that sometimes broken things could be carefully, tentatively pieced back together. Lawson's phone buzzed during his Tuesday clinic shift. 3 missed calls from board members, 2 from his father's assistant, 1 from his mother, the first time she'd reached out in over a year. He ignored them all, focusing on the 6-year-old with pneumonia who needed his attention more than corporate politics needed his response. But the messages kept coming. Text previews he glimpsed between patients. "The optics of you working at a community clinic are becoming problematic. Investors are asking questions about family stability. Your father wants to discuss your recent choices." He deleted them unopened, but each buzz was a reminder that his old world hadn't released its claim on him entirely. The Blackwell name carried weight that pressed down even on those who tried to escape it. During lunch break, Victor Hale called directly. "They know," Victor said without preamble. About the child. Someone saw you at the museum, recognized the resemblance. The board is having emergency sessions about succession implications. She's 7 years old, Lawson said tightly. She's not a succession implication. She's a child with asthma who deserves privacy, I agree. But you know how they think. A Blackwell heir outside the family structure represents either a threat or an opportunity, depending on who's doing the calculating. Lawson ended the call, staring at the clinic's faded motivational posters. He'd tried to build walls between his past and present, but money like his family's had ways of seeping through cracks. The question was how long he could maintain those barriers, and what would happen when they inevitably fell. That evening, he arrived at the community center at 5:45 a.m. as promised, finding Destiny already there, sketching outlines on a massive wall. She looked up at his approach, paint already dotting her coveralls. "You came," she said, sounding slightly surprised. "I said I would." He picked up 2 paint cans, testing their weight. "Where do you want these?" As they worked in companionable quiet, the sunrise gradually illuminating her design, Lawson made a decision. Whatever the board threatened, whatever his family demanded, these mornings, these careful, precious moments of building trust 1 paint can at a time, were worth any corporate consequences. The email arrived at 7:23 a.m. on a Wednesday, marked urgent from Franklin Elementary's family counselor, Mrs. Adelaide Morrison. Destiny opened it, while Nerea ate cereal shaped like stars, humming a song about planets she'd learned at school. Subject, media attention. Please call a SAP. The message contained a link to Seabrook Voices, a local philanthropy blog run by Jamal Pierce, a well-meaning community activist who documented charitable work across the city. The latest post, uploaded the previous evening, featured a photo Destiny recognized instantly. Lawson and Nerea at the park, feeding ducks. Her daughter's face turned up toward him in concentration as he demonstrated the proper seed-tossing technique. The headline read, "Blackwell heir returns to medicine, mentors local children." The article praised Lawson's grassroots approach to pediatric care and his hands-on involvement with underserved youth. It mentioned his family's medical legacy, his departure from corporate life, and speculation about what had drawn him specifically to Seabrook's community clinics. The photograph was innocent enough. Anyone could mistake it for doctor-patient interaction, but the caption made Destiny's blood run cold. Dr. Lawson Blackwell spending quality time with young patients outside clinical settings demonstrates commitment to holistic care. Nerea wasn't named, but her face was clearly visible. Someone with enough curiosity and internet access could identify her, connect dots that should remain unconnected. Mrs. Morrison's email continued. 3 parents have already asked if the Blackwell Foundation is funding school programs. 2 reporters called the office, asking about community partnerships. I wanted you to be aware before this escalates. Destiny's hands shook as she forwarded the link to Lawson with a single line, "We need to talk." "Today." His response came within 2 minutes. "My place, 6 p.m., or anywhere you're comfortable." "I'm so sorry." Destiny left Nerea with Aunt Inez, whose one look at her niece's expression prompted immediate babysitting without questions. She drove to the address Lawson had texted, not the estate she'd feared, but a modest duplex on the east side, the kind of place young professionals rented when prioritizing location over luxury. He was waiting on the porch, still wearing scrubs from his clinic shift, looking like he'd aged a decade since their museum visit. 2 mugs of coffee sat on the railing, though neither touched them. "I didn't authorize that post," he said immediately. "Jamal Pierce operates independently. I've never spoken to him about my work, but someone did." Destiny remained standing, arms crossed. "Someone saw you with her and thought it was newsworthy. Someone took that photo and published it without considering that maybe, just maybe, a 7-year-old deserves privacy. You're absolutely right. Naraya is not a story, Lawson. She's not a feel-good anecdote about reformed billionaires doing community service. She's a child with a medical condition who already has enough to deal with without being a curiosity in someone's narrative about your redemption. The words hit their target. Lawson flinched but didn't defend himself, didn't make excuses. What do you need me to do? I need you to understand that every choice you make affects her now. Every public appearance, every connection to your name, every... She stopped, forcing herself to breathe, to be strategic rather than simply angry. If this is going to work, if you're going to be part of her life, you need to be invisible. Not Dr. Lawson Blackwell, heir to the medical dynasty. Just Lawson, a pediatrician, who happens to care about one specific patient. I can do that. He pulled out his phone, typed rapidly. I'm declining the panel invitation at the pediatric conference next month. I'll redirect all PR inquiries to other physicians. I'll contact Jamal Pierce directly and request that the photo be removed with an explanation that the family didn't consent to publication. And if he asks why it matters, I'll tell him that patient privacy extends beyond HIPAA regulations into basic human decency. Lawson looked up from his phone. I chose to leave the spotlight, Destiny. I'm not going back to it, especially not at Naraya's expense. The certainty in his voice, the immediate action rather than empty promises, diffused some of her anger. She finally sat, picking up the coffee mug he'd prepared. Cream, no sugar, exactly how she'd taken it 7 years ago. He'd remembered. The board is going to push back, she said quietly. They'll see this as a wasted opportunity for positive publicity. The board doesn't get a vote in my personal life anymore. I made that clear when I resigned. He set his phone down, meeting her eyes directly. If they push, I push back harder. You and Naraya don't exist for their marketing purposes. A car pulled up as the sun began setting, casting the porch in amber light. Victor Hale emerged carrying a banker's box, his expression grim. He was older than Destiny expected, mid-60s maybe, with military bearing and eyes that had clearly seen enough corporate warfare to be disgusted by it. Ms. Carter, he said, extending his hand. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Lawson led them inside to a living room that was surprisingly sparse. Functional furniture, medical journals stacked on a coffee table, walls bare except for a framed pediatric anatomical chart. Victor set the box on the dining table with a heaviness that suggested its contents weighed more than paper. Archive Box 2017-43C, Victor said, removing the lid. Personal correspondence, quarantine protocol. I had to call in favors to access this. Technically, it should have been destroyed per retention policies, but someone kept it. Inside were manila folders organized with meticulous tabs. Victor pulled out the thickest one, marked with Destiny's name and dates spanning 3 months 7 years ago. Her letters, all of them. The envelopes had been opened, she saw immediately. Clean slices along the top, professional and thorough. Someone had read every word she'd poured out in a lamplight, every plea for contact, every update about her pregnancy. The ultrasound image she'd included in the last letter sat in a plastic protective sleeve, her 8-week baby visible as a grainy blob with the world's most significant heartbeat. Lawson reached for the folder with shaking hands, but Victor intercepted. Before you read these, you need to understand the system. Victor pulled out another document, a printed spreadsheet with columns, date received, sender, content summary, action taken, authorized by. Everything that came to you during the transition period was screened by a team. Threats were forwarded to security. Business matters went to appropriate departments. Personal correspondence was Categorized. Categorized how? Lawson's voice was barely controlled. Approved or quarantined. Approved items were delivered to you. Quarantined items were held in archive with notation explaining why they were deemed potentially disruptive to crisis management. Destiny found her voice. Who decided what was disruptive? Victor's finger traced down the authorization column. Every entry for her letters bore the same signature, T. Avery. Trent Avery, Victor explained. Junior executive assistant assigned to filter your communications. He reported directly to your mother during the transition period. Lawson opened the first letter, dated 2 weeks after his father's stroke. Destiny watched him read her words, carefully chosen phrases about understanding his family crisis, gentle questions about when they could talk, hope that he was managing okay. The second letter, sent a week later, was more urgent. The third revealed her pregnancy. Each letter was marked with the same notation: quarantine, personal relationships matter, disruptive to current corporate stabilization priorities. Recommend no delivery pending resolution of succession crisis. He never saw them, Destiny said aloud, the reality settling like stones. You actually never knew. Lawson's hands clenched the papers hard enough to crumple edges. Trent Avery made decisions about my personal life based on corporate priorities, and my mother... He stopped, jaw working. My mother supervised him. She knew this system existed. There's more, Victor said quietly, pulling out a single sheet from the bottom of the box. Internal memo from Lydia Blackwell to the screening team, dated 3 weeks into the crisis. The memo was brief, typed on official Blackwell Industries letterhead. All personal correspondence of romantic or emotional nature to be held indefinitely. Lawson's focus must remain undivided during this transitional period. Personal entanglements can be addressed after corporate stability is restored. Family preservation is paramount. The clinical language, personal entanglements, family preservation, reduced Destiny and her unborn child to obstacles in a business strategy. She didn't just allow it, Lawson said, his voice hollow. She ordered it. Victor nodded. I found 17 other people whose letters were similarly quarantined. Friends, former colleagues, even your undergraduate mentor trying to reach you about a research opportunity, all categorized as potential distractions. Destiny expected Lawson to explode, to immediately call his mother, to weaponize this evidence into public confrontation. Instead, he carefully returned the letters to their folder, his movements precise and controlled. I'm going to address this, he said quietly, privately, directly, with my mother and with Trent Avery. That's it? Destiny couldn't hide her surprise. You have proof they stole 7 years from all of us, and you're just going to have a conversation. A very specific conversation about consequences, Lawson clarified. Public exposure would hurt Naraya more than them. It would invite media scrutiny, raise questions, put her in the center of a scandal she didn't create. That's not justice, that's collateral damage. He turned to Victor. Can you secure these originals somewhere they can't be destroyed? Already have a safety deposit box reserved, Victor confirmed. Copies go to 3 separate attorneys with instructions to release them only under specific circumstances. Share this with someone who needs to set a loving boundary today. Your share may be the reason they feel brave. Sometimes the hardest conversations are the ones that protect what matters most. The thermometer read 103.7 degrees Fahrenheit, and Naraya's breathing had that quality Destiny had learned to fear, quick, shallow, each inhale accompanied by a soft whistle that meant her airways were constricting. The fever had spiked within an hour, going from slight warmth at bedtime to burning skin that made Destiny's stomach clench with practiced terror. "Mummy, I can't breathe right," Naraya whispered, her voice small and frightened in the glow of the nightlight shaped like a crescent moon. Destiny was already moving, muscle memory from 7 years of midnight emergencies taking over. Cool washcloth for the forehead. Rescue inhaler. 2 puffs, proper spacing, count to 10 between doses. Propped pillows to elevate her daughter's chest. The nebulizer sat ready on the nightstand, Mr. Whistle prepared for duty if the inhaler wasn't enough. But this felt different. The fever combined with respiratory distress created an equation Destiny had learned meant emergency room visits and overnight monitoring. Her phone was in her hand. Before she consciously decided to call, Lawson's number, added to her favorites after the park incident, already selected. He answered before the first ring finished. Destiny? Naraya's running 103.7 with labored breathing. Rescue inhaler given 5 minutes ago, minimal improvement. I'm about to start the nebulizer, but... Her voice cracked despite her attempt at clinical calm. I'm coming. Keep her upright, start the nebulizer, don't let her talk too much. I'll be there in 12 minutes. The sound of keys jingling, a door closing. Stay on the line with me. Those 12 minutes stretched like hours. Lawson talked to her through assessment protocols, his voice steady and professional, asking specific questions about respiration rate, skin color, alertness level. She could hear his car engine, the rhythm of turn signals, his absolute focus transmitted through the phone connection. You're doing everything right, he said as she reported Naraya's response to the nebulizer. The fever suggests viral infection, possibly influenza or RSV. The respiratory distress is secondary to the underlying illness combined with her asthma. We'll manage both. Lawson arrived with a medical kit that looked more comprehensive than some urgent care facilities. He'd thrown a jacket over pajama pants and a t-shirt that read, "Trust me, I'm a doctor," in faded letters. Clearly his emergency call outfit. Practical rather than professional. But his approach to Naraya was pure physician competence. He knocked softly before entering her room, crouched beside her bed at eye level, and spoke directly to her rather than over her. "Hey, sweetheart, I heard you're not feeling great. Can I check a few things?" Naraya nodded, too exhausted to speak much, but her eyes tracked him with recognition and trust that made Destiny's chest ache. He worked methodically, pulse, oximeter on her finger, stethoscope to her chest and back, thermometer under her tongue, gentle palpation of her lymph nodes. Throughout, he narrated his actions in age-appropriate language that demystified the examination. Your oxygen levels are okay, 92%, which isn't perfect but acceptable with the nebulizer. Your lungs sound congested but not pneumonic. Heart rate is elevated from the fever, which is normal. Your throat looks irritated but not strep-level angry. He turned to Destiny, who'd been standing in the doorway, giving him space to work. "Can you grab me a glass of water and the fever reducer from the kit?" Children's ibuprofen, the liquid form. She moved to comply, but he added quietly, "You've managed this beautifully so far. I'm a backup, not replacement. Tell me if I'm overstepping." The acknowledgement meant more than he probably realized. He wasn't swooping in to save them. He was joining a team where Destiny had been the captain for 7 years. For the next hour, they worked in synchronized rhythm. Destiny administered medications, while Lawson monitored vital signs. He suggested cool compresses, while she prepared them with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this dozens of times. When Naraya needed repositioning, they moved together, supporting her weight carefully to minimize breathing disruption. By 4:30 a.m., Naraya's fever had dropped to 101.2 degrees, and her breathing had normalized enough that the whistle disappeared from her inhales. She slept deeply, sprawled across pillows with the abandon of children who've exhausted themselves fighting illness. Lawson checked her vitals one final time, then motioned Destiny toward the living room. They moved quietly leaving Naraya's door open so they could hear any changes. "She's stable," he said, collapsing onto the couch with visible relief. "The worst has passed. She'll need rest, fluids and continued fever management, but no hospital trip tonight." Dawn was breaking when Lawson finally prepared to leave, the sky shifting from black to deep purple. Destiny walked him to the porch, both of them moving carefully to avoid waking Naraya, who'd likely sleep until late morning. Moths still clung to the porch light, drawn by illumination that would soon be irrelevant. Lawson stopped at the top of the steps, turning back to face her. They stood close enough that she could see exhaustion in the set of his shoulders, concern still lingering in his expression. "Tonight mattered," he said quietly. "Not just medically. Being here, being trusted in her crisis, our crisis, that mattered to me more than I can articulate. You showed up. That's what mattered. I want to keep showing up. For her and—" He stopped himself, jaw tightening with visible effort. "I want to kiss you, Destiny. Have wanted to since the moment I walked into that examination room and saw you again. But I also want to deserve it. I want to earn back trust that was stolen from us. Want to be certain that anything between us is built on foundation, not just history." The confession hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Destiny felt the pull of it, the temptation to close the distance and let 7 years of separation dissolve in physical connection. But he was right. Rushing intimacy would complicate everything they were carefully building for Naraya. "I want that too," she admitted. "Both things, the kiss and the deserving. So we wait." "We wait," she agreed, "until the foundation is solid enough to support more weight." The meeting took place 3 days later at Lawson's duplex, neutral territory that gave neither Lydia nor Destiny home field advantage. Victor Hale attended as witness, the archive box positioned prominently on the dining table like evidence at a trial. Lydia Blackwell arrived precisely on time, dressed in designer casual wear that probably cost more than Destiny's monthly income. She was smaller than Destiny remembered, elegant but brittle, someone who'd built armor from control and propriety. "Lawson," she said, her tone carefully neutral. Then, with visible effort, "Miss Carter." "Mrs. Blackwell," Destiny replied, matching her formality. They sat around the dining table, a setup that felt more like contract negotiation than family reconciliation. Lawson opened the archive box, removing the folder of intercepted letters with deliberate slowness. "Before we begin, I want to establish what this meeting is not," Lawson said, his voice carrying the command he'd once used in boardrooms. "This is not reconciliation. This is not absolution. This is documentation of harm done and establishment of non-negotiable boundaries moving forward." Lydia's composure cracked minutely. "Lawson, I understand you're angry, but the circumstances. 7 years ago, you implemented a system to control my communications during a family crisis. That system intercepted letters from Destiny informing me she was pregnant with my child. You saw those letters, or at minimum knew they existed, and chose corporate stability over my right to know I was becoming a father." He pushed the folder across the table. Lydia didn't open it. "Your granddaughter is 7 years old. Her name is Naraya Carter. She has asthma that requires daily medication and occasional emergency intervention. She's brilliant, curious, and completely unaware that her father's family actively prevented him from knowing she existed." The silence stretched. Destiny watched emotions war across Lydia's carefully maintained expression, pride struggling against something that might have been regret. Finally, Lydia spoke. "I made decisions I believed were necessary for family preservation. I see now that those decisions caused harm I didn't adequately consider." The words sounded rehearsed, legal, but her next sentence carried more genuine emotion. I would like the opportunity to know my granddaughter, if that's possible. Destiny leaned forward. This was her moment. Lawson had promised her control over the terms. That depends entirely on the conditions you'll accept, Destiny said. No publicity, no photographs for social media or family announcements, no gifts that require explanation beyond what I approve, no undermining my authority as her parent, no contact with Nerea without my explicit permission each time, and most importantly, no attempts to bring her into the Blackwell world until she's old enough to understand and consent to what that means. Those are extensive restrictions, Lydia said carefully. Those are boundaries that protect a 7-year-old from adult politics and family drama she didn't create. Destiny's tone was steel. You either accept them completely, or you remain a stranger to her. That evening, Destiny sat on Naraya's bed, nervous in a way she hadn't been since the first time she'd held her newborn daughter. Lawson waited in the living room, present but not intrusive, available if needed. "Baby, I need to talk to you about something important," Destiny began. Naraya set down her drawing of what appeared to be a dragon with a stethoscope. "Is it about Dr. Blackwell? He's been around a lot." The observation shouldn't have surprised her. Naraya noticed everything, processed patterns with the same analytical mind that studied duck behavior and lung diagrams. "Yes, it's about him. Remember how I explained that your dad had to go away before you were born? That he didn't know about you?" Naraya nodded slowly. "Well, Dr. Blackwell is your dad. He didn't know about you because some people made it so he couldn't find out. But now he knows, and he wants to be part of your life if that's okay with you." The silence stretched, while Nerea processed this information with characteristic seriousness. "So when he comes to feed ducks and fixes my breathing and makes you smile, that's because he's my dad?" "Yes." "Does he want to be called Dad, or should I keep saying Dr. Blackwell?" The question, so practical, so purely Naraya, made Destiny's eyes burn. "That's something you can ask him yourself. There's no rush. You can take all the time you need to feel comfortable." Nerea considered this, her expression thoughtful. "Can he come in here?" Destiny called Lawson, who appeared in the doorway looking terrified in a way medical emergencies had never made him. Naraya studied him with the same intense focus she applied to everything, then patted the bed beside her. "Mummy says you're my dad." "I am," Lawson said, his voice rough. "I'm sorry I didn't know sooner. I would have been here from the beginning if I'd known. But you're here now." "Yes, and I'd like to keep being here, if that's okay with you." Naraya picked up her dragon drawing, examining it with a critical eye. Then she handed it to Lawson. "This is for you. It's a medical dragon. It breathes healing fire instead of regular fire." He took the drawing like it was made of gold. "This is the best gift I've ever received. Dr. Blackwell is too long to say all the time," Naraya announced. "Can I just say Dad?" The single syllable, small, ordinary, weighted with 7 years of absence, hit Lawson with visible force. "I would really like that." "Okay." She yawned, the day's revelations apparently less dramatic to her than the adults had feared. "Dad, will you still help with my breathing?" "Always," he promised. "And anything else you need." 1 year later, the ribbon cutting at Maple and Main Pediatrics drew a crowd that spilled from the waiting room into the parking lot. Destiny stood beside her latest creation, hands paint-stained, despite her attempt to clean them, while Dr. Patterson gave a speech about community art healing spaces. The mural transformed the entire check-in corridor, 30 feet of wall depicting a river of children passing lanterns to each other. Each child was different, representing the diversity of families who walked through these doors. Some children sat in wheelchairs, others held inhalers or medical equipment, a few wore hospital bracelets. But every single one carried light forward, passing it to the next child in an endless chain of connection. The river's path aligned perfectly with the flow of foot traffic, leading families from entrance to check-in desk. And there, at the desk itself, the final lantern was held by a girl with Naraya's exact profile, head tilted in characteristic thoughtfulness, examining her light like a scientist studying phenomenon. "I see myself," Naraya announced proudly, bouncing on her toes beside Lawson. "Mommy put me in the art." "She did," Lawson agreed, his hand resting on her shoulder with the casual affection of a year's worth of Saturday mornings and Wednesday dinners. "You're carrying the light right to where families check in. That's an important position." Destiny's mural business had evolved into something more substantial. Carter Creative Studios now occupies a renovated warehouse space in downtown Seabrook, with enough room for large-scale projects and a small gallery showcasing local artists. She'd hired Celine Hart as community outreach coordinator. The retired teacher's connections opened doors to schools and non-profits that needed art but lacked budgets. Rafael Ortiz, a young artist she'd mentored through a community program, managed the technical aspects: scaffolding, surface preparation, client communications. Together, they'd completed projects across 3 counties, each one building the studio's reputation for work that transformed spaces into stories. Saturday mornings, the studio hosted free art classes for children. 20 kids ranging from 5 to 12 would fill the space with creative chaos, painting canvases, sculpting clay, learning that art was accessible rather than exclusive. Lawson volunteered regularly, his medical precision translating surprisingly well to teaching kids how to mix colors systematically. "You're getting paint in your hair again," Destiny observed one Saturday, watching him help a 6-year-old create the perfect shade of ocean blue. "It matches the glitter I'm apparently covered in," he replied, gesturing to his paint-splattered jeans that sparkled with craft supplies. "I've accepted that leaving here clean is impossible." After class, he'd sweep floors and organize supplies with the same thoroughness he applied to medical charts. The routine had become their rhythm: art on Saturdays, clinic on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Naraya's activities filling the gaps between. Normal life constructed intentionally from careful choices and consistent showing up. The aquarium trip was Naraya's 8th birthday celebration, her choice over parties or presents. She'd requested just the 3 of them, wanting to see the new jellyfish exhibit she'd read about in her science magazines. They stood in the darkened gallery where jellyfish pulsed through water like living lamps, their translucent bodies glowing blue and purple under specialized lighting. Naraya pressed against the glass, mesmerized by their rhythmic movement. "They breathe differently than us," she observed, her scientific curiosity evident in how she tracked their motion. "No lungs, just diffusion across their membrane. But they still need oxygen, just like me and my asthma." "That's exactly right," Lawson confirmed. "Different mechanism, same essential need. Biology finds lots of ways to solve the same problem." "They look like breathing lamps," Naria continued. "Like my nightlight, but alive, taking in what they need and glowing because of it." Destiny met Lawson's eyes over their daughter's head. A year ago, Naraya had said her mother was a lighthouse. Now she saw breathing lamps in jellyfish, finding light in biological processes. The metaphor had come full circle, transformed by a child's growing understanding of how living things persisted. The CO parenting counseling sessions happened every other week, facilitated by Dr. Maya Thompson, a family therapist who specialized in non-traditional family structures. The sessions provided neutral space to navigate decisions about Naraya's education, medical care, and the gradual expansion of Lawson's involvement in their lives. 6 months after the jellyfish exhibit, the kiss finally happened. It was a Tuesday evening after Naraya had gone to bed, both adults cleaning up from dinner in the small kitchen that barely fit 2 people. Destiny was washing dishes while Lawson dried, their routine so practiced they moved around each other without collision. "I've been thinking," Lawson said, setting down the dish towel. "Dangerous habit," Destiny replied, but she was smiling. "A year ago, I told you I wanted to kiss you, to build a foundation solid enough to support more weight." He turned her gently from the sink, soapy hands and all. "I think we've built something. Slowly, carefully. With counseling and boundaries and so much communication, I sometimes dream of bullet points. Destiny Carter, I'm still in love with you. Probably never stopped, even when I didn't know where you were. So I'm asking permission to kiss you, with full awareness that it means choosing to build something beyond co-parenting." She looked at him, this man who'd shown up at 2 a.m. for fevers, who swept glitter without complaint, who'd confronted his family and chosen different values. "Permission granted," she said. Finally, the kiss was gentle at first, tentative despite their history. Then it deepened, becoming promise and apology and hope all together. 6 months later, Maple and Maine Pediatrics installed a small bronze plaque beside Destiny's mural. The dedication ceremony was simple. No media, just staff and a few families who'd been part of the clinic's community for years. The plaque read, "Passing light forward created by Destiny Carter in honor of families who show up and keep showing up for each other. What's one promise you're keeping this week? Not the big dramatic ones that make good social media posts, the small daily commitments that build foundations. Drop it in the comments. I'll pin a few that remind me why these stories matter." If this moved you, subscribe to Mr. Steele Rich Stories and hit the bell. New American stories every week. Real people facing real choices, finding light in complicated circumstances. And share this with the one person who came to mind while you were listening.